Is it bigger now?
Yep, you got it.
All right. Okay, so we're talking a little bit more about mobile setups.
Could you back up one slide?
There's a title?
Yeah.
Uh-oh. What'd I do wrong?
Okay, you got all three logos. I'm just making sure.
Oh. There's some question about whether or not KRC is going to support it or not. They're talking it over. I think there's some financial responsibility or something would be nice, because nobody's giving me any money. Okay, installing a mobile radio in a car. You don't have a separate power supply to deal with. You have a battery in the car. So you need to connect. Well, they say for permanent installations, I guess if it's temporary, you'd have a connector. And you'd probably have a pigtail connected to the battery that you could connect to easily. You want to connect the negative side of your radio power cable to the battery chassis ground, either directly at the battery or normally in the car, it will have a fairly heavy gauge strap connected to someplace on the chassis close by. It'll usually be fairly short, maybe a foot. So you want to get it to one of those 2 points as close to the battery as possible. Sometimes it's not that easy to get to the battery in some of these newer cars or make a connection to it.
So if you've got a mobile radio and you put it under your seat and you don't have a computer under the seat, then usually one of the bolts that holds down the seat can be a good ground point.
Yeah, unless you got a Corvette.
Yeah.
The positive lead obviously goes to the 12-volt plus side of the battery. And that also should be connected at the battery. In the case of the car, you're going to want a fuse on both leads, whereas in your home base station from the power supply, you'll only have normally a fuse on the hot side.
Why would you put a fuse on the ground side?
Hmm?
Why would you put a fuse on the ground side?
Actually, I don't know,
I mean, that's not logical.
but
I've questioned that and.
but they come that way.
Some of
The
the-
cable you get with the radio will have 2 fuses.
With some radios.
The thing is that the power is at the battery,
You know,
okay? If you aren't fused at the battery at the positive side, okay, what is the chance of the negative shorting out to hot somewhere else?
very negative.
Yeah, so your negative wire can still touch a hot wire somewhere else, so it's being doubly safe, that's all it is.
Yeah.
And a lot of times the fuses are at the radio and not at the battery.
It's just called good engineering practice, but you're right.
The reason I'm asking because
I don't
we
see,
install technology in vehicles all over the country.
Right.
I mean, power vehicles, police cars, everything, and we've never, ever
Right.
put a fuse line on the ground.
Yeah,
and you definitely do not do it on AC house current.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The neutral is connected directly.
so the fuse you're gonna get is next to the radio, little radio pigtail. But if you aren't have fused at the battery, then you've got a lot of wire running, okay, that's not fused for the ground to actually get back to the, hot.
So actually, I would move it.
Yeah.
I would move it to put it, so it would not.
I think all of,
You would like Bruce? Bruce, when he built this, radio rack after retirement, of course, I don't know whether he looms all of them, but he hand loomed his little,
And we use split loom on everything.
Yeah, yeah. He did a hand woven one, you know,
Oh.
rocket guy.
Okay, that's different.
Okay, so
You think that's a little bit much?
if it's on the test, it's both.
Okay,
Where should the negative power return of a mobile transceiver be connected in a vehicle?
Alpha or negative,
Right,
alpha, yeah.
alpha.
Apple jack. Apple jack.
Okay. Battery operation. If you're at home or out in the woods or at the seashore or at one of Byron's QRP park sites, you're probably going to be operating off of a battery. Because if even at 5 and 10 watts, use up a few amp hours.
Yeah.
So in order to determine how long you're going to be able to operate, you need to find out what the average current draw is for the radio. And then divide the amp hour rating of the battery. It's probably a 12-volt, kind of like a motorcycle battery or one of these gel cell SLAs, I think they call them. Or everybody's going to the lithium iron phosphate now for 2 or 3 times the price.
Mm.
they come down.
Yeah, but they're still quite a bit more, but they're a lot lighter. Much lighter than a lead acid battery. So you divide the amp hour rating, say it's a 12-volt, 9 amp hour battery, which is kind of typical for a small one. I think the Biano for that is what, $80,
Something like that.
something in that range. And that would give you the number of hours that you could operate with that average current draw. And the average would be over a period of time where you're transmitting and receiving, because you're only drawing a lot of power when you transmit.
And most.
Less than an amp normally when you're receiving.
Yeah, most time when you're operating portable, probably 80 to 90% of the time, you're tuning and listening for a strong station that you think you can make a contact with. If it's a weak station, chance of you making a contact almost zero. Because there's probably, not enough power unless that guy's a QRP operator also.
And you have good propagation
And you have good propagation,
and a good antenna.
good antenna.
Antenna is probably more important than the radio.
Mm.
So it is.
So how can you determine the length of time that equipment can be powered from a battery? It's another math question, Brenda.
I hate this.
Ooh, there we go. Boy, I think I might.
I
know.
would say, Bravo.
I'd say you're right. Another thing you need to consider is called microphone gain. I guess I don't know any handy talkie that lets you adjust that. You basically do it by how close you hold the handy talkie to your mouth, which affects the amount of modulation or deviation in the case of FM. In a base station, one of the things you can normally adjust is microphone gain. And you obviously don't want to get it too high, because if you over modulate or over deviate, it causes distortion, harmonics, and basically it causes clipping of the waveform, which creates a lot of harmonics. If it's too low, it means that you're not getting as much power out. In other words, ideally you want 100% modulation. Above that, you cause harmonics distortion. Below 100%, you're not getting the maximum amount of power out as you modulate or speak into it.
How do you know you have 100%?
Hmm?
How do you know you have 100%?
Well, you kind of listen for feedback of whether or not your signal is distorted.
Okay.
And that kind of gives you a clue that, you're either talking too loud into the microphone or the microphone gain is too high.
Okay.
So you kind of have to find the sweet spot.
Yeah.
It's one of the adjustments you have to do for the digital modes also.
CB20.
I didn't know there was a way you could like tune it. Okay.
Yeah, but you have, unless you have a radio that's showing you your output waveform,
That's what I
in
was.
some cases you do, but
No,
not on a handy talkie.
Okay.
no, I'm not handy talking, but most of your radios that are, more high end,
Uh-huh.
your, HF radios, they'll have a setting called ALC,
Okay.
and it'll give you a recommended setting for your ALC.
Which is the.
Well, no, it's automatic level control. It's trying to limit the output.
Okay.
And you wanna, do the setting manually with your microphone gain where the ALC is not having to do it for
Right.
you. It's basically what
You
they're
really don't
trying
want to
get.
see ALC.
Okay.
Because it's going to cause clipping. Because it reduces the, it sort of clips your signal,
Okay.
and that's not good. Especially on the digital modes, you really want to get it to where you don't see any ALC activity at all. And that's becomes a whole little dance of doing the speaker gain and microphone gain and power and about 4 different settings to get it right. But then you don't have to mess with it because the radio remembers. Tuning. If you're on FM, I guess if you're on VFO, where you're tuning in an FM station, you could be not quite on the frequency. If it's in channel mode or memory mode, then they're fixed frequencies, so it should be pretty close. I guess it could still be off because the guy on the other end might not be exactly on frequency. So you get some distortion if you're both not on the same frequency. In order to change the frequency, like on a handy talkie, you have a keypad and you can set the frequency by just pressing numbers on the keypad to input it. If it's in VFO mode, as opposed to memory mode, you can rotate, like in this case, you just rotate one of those knobs and vary the frequency. Or in memory mode, you could just call up a channel where you've stored that frequency. And that's the easiest way to operate, is just have all your repeaters and simplex frequencies stored, which is part of the programming thing, which I don't think we talk about too much in here.
Talked a little bit about Chirp.
Chirp is one of the applications you can use to program some radios.
Okay.
A lot of them come, some of them come with programming software that's free. Some of the ICOMs do. Or you can buy RT Systems software,
Mhm.
and they're around $30 or something for every radio. It probably works the best, but you have to pay for it.
Mhm.
The current version of Chirp is called Chirp Next.
Chirp Next.
Yeah.
Ooh. Yeah, but that was on, we were on Chirp yesterday. Did you get on it? I was on Chirp after we had talked.
No, I don't have it downloaded,
I pulled it up on the
but I
internet,
was wondering if.
and our radios are on there, to be, if they interact with Chirp.
Okay,
But we want to do Chirp Next.
Yeah, it won't I don't think it'll let you download anything else. I think,
Okay.
there might be certain radios that they're not covering yet on Chirp Next that you have to download the legacy version for, but I don't know of any specifically.
And so when you use that Chirp Next to to program your radio, does it automatically set the frequencies for the repeaters in this area? Is that what it does?
There is a way in there somewhere that you can use
Download.
Repeater Book or some of the others to download.
Right.
Uh, the frequencies and the tones and everything. I've never used that. I've always just put them all in, the ones specifically that I want.
Okay,
If you go that route, what I found is that you had to learn another step, because in addition to downloading what Repeater Book has, or I can't remember, radio reference.
radio reference.
Yeah.
I see.
Whichever one you download, you have to also learn how to go in there and delete the ones that you want
Yeah.
and not, or delete the ones you don't, retain the ones that you do want.
Yeah.
And it was faster for me to just put them in, because there's, I think I put like 15 local repeaters
Okay.
in. And then I did all the SARNet repeaters from Cocoa up to
Titusville.
Georgia, let's see, up to, what is that, 75, it goes up through Georgia.
Yeah.
I did all those because that's a normal route that I take when I go to visit my dad in Kentucky. So,
So that way, if we've got them to Atlanta, we can use SARNet on.
and if you.
That was
haven't-
what it was set up for along the north-south corridors.
And if you haven't already figured it out, I'm gonna go ahead and clue you into the next big issue. And that is, once you load your radio up with 40 or 50 repeaters,
Uh-huh.
you have to find the one that you want. So the
Yeah.
way I've done mine is I've got it mapped out where 1 through, or channel 0 through channel 21 or 22 is all the SARNet repeaters going up through Jacksonville and over to 75 and then up into Georgia. That's like the first group, and then the second group is all the ones that I use here in Cocoa from the house or anywhere around here. And then the third group is all the ones that are not supposed to be on there that
Somehow
the
managed to get on
jeepers
it.
you,
Yeah.
what's that, yeah.
Somehow.
And,
managed
and
to
then,
get on there.
and then another group somehow managed to get there, and then another group just for the 6 or 8, whatever it is, weather channels.
Cause that's what they're
So-
saying, if you don't
yeah.
use the chirp, then you can't name them, is that right?
You can.
Some
still name them,
radios-
But it's hard to do.
Okay,
on the keypad.
yeah.
You can do it.
And if
Pull out my
you,
hair.
if you unlock the radio so that you can put stuff on there that you're not supposed to put on there, some of those it won't let you name. And then when you update and download again, it won't put them on there. You have to re-enter them through the face of the radio.
Okay.
Okay, the other thing you can do, and a lot of, I don't know, would you say all handy talkies allow you to scan?
I don't know any that don't.
Okay,
What Dan mentioned as far as groups, most radios support memory groups. And it'll be 20 to 50, frequencies within a group.
Okay.
And, it's one for SARNet. What I do, because I'm more interested in, MCOM, is I've set up the repeaters in the county from north to south, because we have a long skinny county.
Mhm.
And then the first 3, because usually you have 8 characters. The first 3, I use the last megahertz number, and then the first 2 kilohertz numbers.
Mhm.
So for the 3.7 repeat, I'll say that's 145.37. So I'll say 537 for 14537. Then I'll have a letter scheme to show where the repeater is. And I usually do the first consonants.
Mhm.
So Coco would be CCO.
Okay.
Okay, and then if the tone is not a standard tone, I'll put a couple more numbers, so I'll be able to tell someone what the PL tone or whatever code that is.
Okay.
so one of the modes that, like Byron said, most of them support is scanning. And you can set it up to either scan through a range of frequencies. In some radios, you can actually scan through your memory channels. So you can basically, it's like a police scanner sort of thing. You listen and it just sequentially round robins through all the channels or the frequencies. And if you hear something, you know, you can hit the button and stop at that point. So what is the effect of microphone gain on single sideband transmissions? I would say it's not just single sideband. It's going to affect FM too.
Mhm.
Delta,
Beta or Bravo.
Mhm.
Boy, I don't think that has anything to do with SWR.
I'm going with those.
yeah, the,
It doesn't affect SWR
right,
or the frequency.
Yeah.
So what is the result of tuning an FM receiver above or below a signal's frequency?
We'll go with Delta.
Delta,
Yep. Delta sounds good. Which of the following can be used to enter a transceiver's operating frequency?
I always use, what is it?
You said the key-
Alpha,
like that nod.
Yeah.
She's right.
Yeah, I.
Alpha.
always-
Mhm.
Now, we hadn't talked about CTCSS or DTMF yet. Or automatic frequency control. I don't know, handy talkies have AFC? Yeah. I don't think so. It's not obvious anyway. What is a way to enable quick access to a favorite frequency or channel on your transceiver?
Boy, if I knew how to do that, it'd make life easier.
that would be, B,
Bravo. What does the scanning function of an FM transceiver do?
Can that be done?
They say so.
that would be
I don't
Charlie,
ever do it.
Oh,
Charlie,
Charlie. Okay, there's some more controls. One of them is squelch. And it basically mutes the audio when there's not a sufficient signal level. And in some cases, it's adjustable. In some cases, it's an automatic squelch. And the only option is to turn it off.
Mhm.
On my ICOM radio, I can't adjust it. It does a very good, no,
really?
really,
Hmm.
Is
does a
that-
very good job of auto squelch. But I have a squelch button that turns it off.
Hmm.
So if I want to listen for a weak signal, you just hold the squelch button and you get the whole 9 yards.
Wow.
So it's just.
But I have not found a setting where I can change the,
Go from one
Yeah,
to
but the
another.
manual's only this thick.
true,
Yeah.
but I've been through all the menu settings. So when you're trying to tune in a weak FM signal, one of the things that you can do is adjust the squelch down or turn it off so that you hear everything, and you might be able to hear something through the noise. Although typically with FM, it's not like listening to single sideband where you can pick stuff out. It's either a signal with a lot of scratchy in the background or not at all.
Yeah, well, we only have to worry about that or simplex exercises, and we like to
Yeah,
listen to the scratchy signals.
right. And I could never hear you from here.
Really?
Well, when you were on the repeater, yes, but when you
And
were,
this was last month?
Yeah.
Okay,
Hmm.
boy, that's interesting.
And you were about the only one I couldn't really pick
Yeah.
up.
Well,
I was out on the sidewalk. you know,
Yeah,
if
I think
was-
Dan heard you,
if I
and he
on-
was 20 feet away from me.
Yeah. And there's a pole there somewhere that supports you.
So
Lines, as long as I was away from it, I could hear you. But-
And I had a J pole up on a tripod,
so
about 20 feet from him,
you were somehow in the shadow.
apparently.
Yeah.
Because somebody else I didn't hear and I moved 3 feet and they came in full quieting.
Yeah, well, this building has, you know, metal on the roof, so that'll do strange things.
Mhm.
Okay, so what is the purpose of a squelch function?
I bet that it's something
Although,
good. You wanna bet that, Dan, that that's something good?
I'm with you. I believe that is true.
Anybody want to go for Bravo?
Bravo, yeah,
I was going for Charlie with Parasite,
Well, let's see.
Parasite.
Yeah.
What are we
Oscillations are
on?
good as long as they're not parasites.
Well, 370. And squelch is on. There's nothing there. And if I turn the squelch off, that's what we get. So how is squelch adjusted so that a weak FM signal can be heard?
I always do that one thing,
The one thing?
you know,
Um,
Turn it on.
Say alpha. So it's all the time.
Well, we have one alpha. Any more alphas?
I like apples instead.
yeah, alpha,
Okay,
You gonna come sit at the test with us? When you pick up these little hints?
he might not pass.
Are you saying don't follow him?
If you turn up the audio level, it doesn't overcome the squelch. It has absolutely nothing to do with squelch. 'Cause the
well, I
squelch-
would think that was the purpose of the squelch, is,
No, the squelch mutes the audio
yeah,
depending on the signal level, okay? So it isn't affected by what the audio level is. I'll show you. Turn this back on. So my audio is all the way down. And if I turn the squelch off, see, and as I go the audio back up, the audio just gets louder, but it has no effect on the squelch itself. And I don't know what an anti-squelch function is.
Yeah, I don't know.
If that's turning squelch off, then that would be good.
I think that's radicals going against the government and the government's trying.
It's
to
like
stop
antimatter, maybe. Okay. VHF, UHF transceivers, operating with repeaters in FM mode have what we call frequency offset. Or some cases it's called repeater offset. It's one of the things that you have to program into the radio. Because the repeater will have a transmit frequency and a receive frequency. So you're listening to its transmit frequency, and that's usually, not always, usually the lower frequency. So in the case of our KSC repeater, it's 444.925. That's what you listen on. When you transmit, it's 5 megahertz higher for its receive. So you would transmit to the repeater on 449.925. So there's a 5 megahertz up or down.
Mhm.
I guess there's a few that go down, but most of the time it's a positive offset on UHF anyway. In VHF at the 2 meter range, it's a 600 kilohertz offset. And there again, it's typically plus, but it can be either. So you'll see, and it shows up a lot of times on the radio display as a DUP, a plus DUP or a minus DUP, which I guess means something up. Or is it, yeah, duplex plus.
Yeah, duplex plus.
So the key to remember is it's 600 kilohertz plus or minus on 2 meters or VHF, and 5 megahertz plus or minus on UHF.
I think on the ballot thing, it's just a plus or minus and they'll do a, do.
Yeah, that's what it is. You have to go in there and enter it and then put the offset too.
Yeah.
Right. So what is meant by repeater offset?
Alpha,
Alpha. Okay, so we learned that you hook the positive power lead on your mobile radio to the positive battery terminal, the negative to the negative or chassis ground. To find out how long you can operate off of a battery, you divide the amp hour rating by the average current draw. That would also apply to your handy talkie. If you look at the battery,
Mhm.
and most of them are replaceable batteries, it'll tell you what the amp hour rating is. So you could kind of,
What if my battery is not mobile?
well, you got a long wire.
I know, we have some pretty big batteries on the repeater.
Okay.
I would want to use a mobile.
For transceivers, you want to check your microphone gain so that it's not too high and causing distortion, or too low where you're not putting out a very strong signal. If you're tuning, you want to take care how you tune it. If you're above or below, you're going to distort the signal. You change frequencies by either numbers on a keypad on the radio. Even a base station may have a keypad display on the touch screen perhaps, or might have separate keypad on the radio. Almost all of the handy talkies have some way to enter those frequencies with buttons. Or you can change it with the VFO knob or selecting a different memory channel. And scanning will tune through a range of frequencies or memory channels. Can be set to do either. Squelch just mutes the audio when there's not a strong enough signal present. And if it has an adjustable squelch setting, what you're setting is the signal level at which it does the squelch function. If it's below a certain signal level, it'll turn the squelch on. If the signal is above that, then it will not turn the squelch on. And repeater frequency offset is 600 kilohertz for VHF and 5 megahertz for UHF. And that also applies to satellites for VHF and UHF, those same offsets.